Dune Part 1 was a cinematic masterpiece that left us with only one question: whether they would manage to stick the landing with Dune Part 2 or not. Join me for my spoiler-free review, where I reveal whether they managed to pull it off or not.
Phrasing, mother.
None of what I'm about to tell you are spoilers. I'm going to keep it as vague and as generic as possible. You will still be quite surprised by a lot of the stuff that happens that I've left out. Ladies and gentlemen and others, welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here once again. I'm going to kick it off with the most important question that you could possibly have: whether you can see Dune Part 2 without having seen Dune Part 1. I wouldn't recommend it. You'll have a much better time with Dune Part 2 if you actually saw Dune Part 1, or if you at least read the books. Dune has no mercy at all in terms of how much information it throws at us. It just assumes that you would have enough interest and patience to figure things out as we go along. And most of this world building was done in Dune Part 1. This in turn led to the slow burn pacing in Dune Part 1, which a lot of people didn't enjoy. But this is also what enabled Dune Part 2 to pick up the pace in terms of how the story was told. Now don't get me wrong, the pacing was perfectly done for Dune Part 1, as it was perfectly done for Dune Part 2. But each part has a different narrative focus. While Dune Part 1 was trying to set up what the world was like, what the universe was like, and what the stakes were, Dune Part 2 could focus more on the action and resolving most of the plot threads that were left there in Dune Part 1. It's clear that these movies are intended to be watched in one go, which would make for an incredible viewing experience. Dune Part 2 literally picks up a couple of hours later on the same day where the events of Dune Part 1 ended. So, in case you didn't watch Dune Part 1, let me give you a little bit of context before I jump into my review. In the universe of Dune, there's a product called spice, which can only be found on one planet, the planet of Arrakis. Arrakis is a harsh and deadly desert planet inhabited by some of the most dangerous creatures in the universe. The environment is so harsh and intense that humans cannot survive in it without specialized equipment for more than half a day. The spice has many amazing properties, including lengthening the lifespan of people who use it, unlocking incredible mental abilities, as well as enabling interstellar travel. Whoever controls access to the spice controls the universe. The Emperor rules over a number of royal houses who run the spice trade in the universe. For almost 100 years, House Harkonnen have been harvesting spice on Arrakis at behest of the Emperor. Another house, the House of Atreides, has been growing in power, and the Emperor decides to hand over control of Arrakis to that family. This, of course, leads to the central conflict between the Harkonnens and the Atreides in Dune Part 1. House Harkonnen and House Atreides have been at odds for centuries, but this event is a catalyst that leads to war between the two families. In Dune Part 1, we meet Paul Atreides, the only heir and son to Duke Leto Atreides and Lady Jessica. In general, House Atreides is built on honor, loyalty, and duty. And the indigenous inhabitants of the planet are called the Fremen, and most of them have been fighting an ongoing guerrilla war with the Harkonnen for the past 80 years. However, a religious order that is part of the Empire has been spreading a prophecy throughout the universe of a coming Messiah. This prophecy has partly been embraced by some of the Fremen. The prophecy is that the Messiah will come from the outworld, which means that some of the populace welcome the Atreides clan, believing that Paul might be this coming Messiah. Paul Atreides started studying the culture and the world of Arrakis long before they actually got there. He also started having prophetic visions about the planet, including dreams of a mysterious Fremen girl. Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, is a member of the Bene Gesserit sect, and she's been training him in the ways of the religious order, unlocking the potential of his mind. Eventually, House Harkonnen decides to take action, and Lady Jessica and Paul end up on the run in the desert. In the desert, they eventually meet up with a group of Fremen, who include the girl that Paul has been having prophetic visions about, which is basically where Part 1 ends. This all sets the scene for all the action that will happen in Part 2. Dune Part 2 picks up a couple of hours later after the events shown in Dune Part 1. The pacing that I love so much in this movie is aided by really brilliant editing. Now, editing is one of those things that's an unseen hero and an unsung hero in a lot of movies. A good editor can be the difference between an award-winning movie and a movie that is just barely okay. And this movie is wonderfully edited. The editing seamlessly takes us from quiet and serene scenes of beauty to deep introspective character moments to incredibly bombastic and over-the-top action scenes without losing us as a viewer or throwing us out of the story. Dune Part 2 isn't all action and explosions. A large part of it focuses on the growing relationship between Paul Atreides and Shani, the Fremen girl that he's been seeing in his dreams. The movie takes time building the relationship between them and showing their feelings for each other. You can't help but to root for them and want their love to survive. This is all out by the incredible chemistry between Zendaya and Timothee Chalamet. I've seen Zendaya in a couple of other movies, and in general I've thought that she's charming and kind of good. However, this is a phenomenal performance by an incredible actress in a role that she seems to have been born for. She steals every single scene that she is in, which is saying a lot because this time around she's acting against a lot of really incredible actors in a lot of scenes, a lot more than she was in Dune Part 1. Zendaya conveys so much with her face. There's more than one scene within this movie where we understand exactly how this character is feeling without her needing to say a single word. All the actors in this are great. Timothee Chalamet completely sells the journey of young and naive Paul Atreides and how he becomes the tough and dangerous resistance fighter Muad'Dib. Timothee Chalamet perfectly portrays the anguished and conflicted aspects of a reluctant anti-hero. This is a man that needs to make really hard choices and really big sacrifices, and you believe that it weighs on him heavily. Rebecca Ferguson is amazing as Lady Jessica. Rebecca Ferguson is perfect as a woman that's caught between her love for her family and her responsibilities and duties to a religious sect. Javier Bardem is always great in any role that he is in, but he's fantastic as Stilgar. About my only complaint is there's a little bit of using him for comedic effect, but the actor himself is fantastic in the role. In Part 2, we are also introduced to a couple of other really incredible characters, and you might be asking, but why weren't they shown in Dune Part 1? And the simple answer, again, is that great pacing that I love so much. If these characters had also been included in Dune Part 1 just to introduce them, it would have slowed down Part 1 even more. Special shout out also to Florence Pugh, who had very few scenes within the movie itself. However, she made the most of every single scene that she was in. Okay, so finally we have to talk about Austin Butler. There's not enough superlatives to explain how good this guy actually is. Incredible, fantastic, amazing, phenomenal, all of those things and more. Again, an actor that just takes over the screen whenever he's on screen. He plays the role of Feyd-Rautha, a member of Clan Harkonnen. His chosen portrayal for the character is intense, charming psychopath wrapped up in smoldering looks. I'm not kidding. When this guy looks at you, you're not sure if he wants to have sex with you or if he wants to kill you. But either way, when he focuses that intense gaze on you, you are about to be fucked.
Language. I'm a kid, asshole.
His introduction as a combatant in the arena on Getty Prime is also a perfect cinematic masterstroke. Within the context of the battle, we learn everything that we need to know about this character. We find out that he is cocky, arrogant, ruthless, psychopathic, but also has a strong sense of honor. He's also an incredibly well-trained fighter, all of which makes him an incredibly menacing and dangerous adversary. The Getty Prime scene is also an example of the exceptional cinematography within this movie. The choice of portraying the environment as seen under a black sun in terms of stark contrast between black and white is incredibly inspired. There's no other way to describe the design and the environment other than as stunning. But then, in general, the cinematography in this movie is exceptional all the way through. Lastly, the action will have you on the edge of your seat throughout. The set pieces are as incredible as the trailers promised. Oh, did I say lastly? Sorry, I also meant to say, and one more thing, the sound design on this movie is absolutely incredible. It is visceral and intense when the action happens, but also perfectly complements those more quiet moments within the movie. I'm really not a fan of people who get all up in their own arse and all pretentious and say that this thing is cinema and this other thing is not cinema. However, as far as this movie is concerned, this is cinema. It's an absolute game changer in terms of how sci-fi movies should look and probably how sci-fi movies will look. Part 1 and Part 2 is only a small part of what this universe is all about, so hopefully we will get to see the entire tale told over the next couple of years. I can't speak for everyone. People like what they like, people don't like what they don't like.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
However, if you saw the first one and you like Dune Part 1, then you will like Dune Part 2. And especially if you like your sci-fi to have a little bit more meat on the bone and not to just be dumb action, then this is definitely a good franchise for you to be interested in. Now, I'm not a Dune purist, and the last time I read these books was more than 20 years ago. Having said that, I'm not too bothered by the changes that were made for this movie. I do believe that whenever one does adaptation for a different medium, then changing things is a necessary evil that has to be considered. So that's it. That's all from me. I really love this movie. I think it is epic and awesome, and I think you should do yourself a favor and check it out in the cinema. Don't wait for this to be on a teeny tiny little TV screen. It just won't have the same effect. Also, if you have seen it, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. As always, a like, share and subscribe would help out the channel immensely. However, if you don't feel like it, that's also cool. I will catch you on the next one.
Sorry. Wait, I live this way.